Welcome to the Rescue, Rebuild, Restore podcast, where we equip church leaders and compassionate Christians to serve the hurting with spirit-led wisdom. I'm your host, Suzanne Burns, author of the book, Rescue, Rebuild, Restore, Compassion That Works. Together, we're going to explore how to rescue body and soul, rebuild spirit and will, and restore lives through the Holy Spirit's power. Because every person deserves to be seen, healed, and loved. Let's dive into today's episode and discover how to live out this calling. Hi, and welcome back to another episode of the Rescue, Rebuild, Restore podcast. I'm your host, Suzanne Burns. I am also the author of Rescue, Rebuild, Restore, Compassion That Works. And that book is available on Amazon as well as on rescuerebuildrestore.com. So reach out to me if you have questions or comments. I would love to talk with you further about the topic of the book. So today on the podcast, I wanted to talk about this idea of a fixed mindset versus a growth mindset. And if you have worked with people in chronic situations for very long, chances are you've come across a mindset block in the people you're trying to work with. It's the situation's fault. It's not the person's fault, which means the person doesn't have any actual responsibility to make true and lasting change. Too often we find ourselves in some cycle of unhealthy behavior or unhealthy situations. So maybe we're chronically home unstable, constantly in fear of being kicked out, or we are constantly losing our jobs. And so we're out of money and we're stressed and we're looking for new employment over and over and over again. We never seem to have any money. We never seem to have food. Or maybe it's in our interpersonal relationships. Kids are constantly in trouble or are constantly causing trouble that mom, dad has to go clean up, right? So we see in other people this pattern, this repetition of unhealthy behaviors that we know can be broken, but that requires change, right? That requires effort, that requires focus. And that is a great picture of this idea of a fixed mindset versus a growth mindset. So a fixed mindset is one, and you can see the graphic here on the screen. A fixed mindset is one that avoids challenges, that shies away from things that you don't seem to understand. It really has this idea that I was born with the skills, the knowledge that I have now, and I cannot do anything else to increase my skills, gifts, talents, knowledge, etc. Right? Now we know that to a certain degree that's accurate, right? There are kids who are born with natural athletic abilities, and there are kids who are born, bless their hearts, without natural athletic abilities. So to a certain degree, that's accurate. There are limitations based on what we're born with. However, both of those children can persevere and can become quite good. The children who were not born with natural athletic ability may have to work harder to get to that level, but the child with natural athletic ability that doesn't ever pursue it, doesn't ever commit to it, doesn't ever really utilize it, the child without the natural athletic ability could actually go farther in their sports career than the kid with the natural ability, simply because of attitude, because of mindset, because of effort. And those are really the big driving differences between a fixed mindset and a growth mindset. So a fixed mindset is very much focused on this idea that intelligence and talent is static and that it doesn't develop any further after we're born. However, a growth mindset challenges all of that and says that I am capable of trying something new. I am capable of learning a new skill. And that is really the necessity in order for us to actually begin to change our lifestyle, to change our behaviors, and to change our outcomes, right? What's the definition of insanity? Doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. Well, that's kind of the contrast between a fixed mindset and a growth mindset. A fixed mindset is incredibly limiting. A fixed mindset says that there is nothing that I can do to change things, so why should I bother trying? A fixed mindset says there's nothing that I can do about this situation, so I'm just going to sit here and wait for someone else to come along and do it for me. And that makes me think of the bedridden man at the pool of Siloam, right? He's waiting 30 some odd years, 38 years for someone to come along and put him into the water. So every day he leaves, right? He leaves the Siloam, goes home, somehow gets back there each day. He couldn't have lived there at the edge of the pool. So he had to have some kind of assistance. And yet his perception was that he didn't have the support, the help he needed for what would actually solve his problem, right? He didn't have anybody to get him into the waters for healing. And so that's oftentimes how people with a fixed mindset perceive the world around them. They see other people getting financial help. They see other people on food stamps. Other people are getting apartments that are income-based, affordable, clean, livable, and decent, but not me. I can't do that because. This can also be a fixed mindset in the yeah buts. Those are the people who, no matter what you suggest, no matter what you say, they always respond with, well, yeah, but, well, that's not going to work because, well, I tried that and it didn't work, or I did this, or I did that. It's not going to work because. I call those people the yeah buts. Everything you suggest, they have a response for why that's not going to work for them. That is very much evidence of a fixed mindset. So what is a growth mindset? So this is going to be somebody who sees challenges as opportunity, who acknowledges and embraces their weaknesses, but not in a sense that that's what is holding me back, but rather I know this is a weakness, so I'm either going to work on it or I'm going to work around it, right? These people with a growth mindset are focused on the process as opposed to the end result, right? We want to achieve this end result, but I understand that what I really need to do is learn the correct process. I have to learn the right thing. So we get inspired by the successes of other people, whereas somebody with a fixed mindset is going to be very threatened by the success of other people. Feeling threatened doesn't always look the same, right? It could be just intimidated, or it could be a sense that, well, they could do it, but I can't. And so it's not so much that you're threatened by it, it's that you perceive that you are somehow not capable. Like, well, they had better opportunities, or, their parents raised them differently, or they were able to do this, or they were farther ahead in line within me, and so they got more. And by the time I came along, I got less. That's kind of the idea in a fixed mindset. Whereas in a growth mindset, that's completely the opposite of how people perceive things. I'm inspired by the stories of other people. I'm inspired to act. I'm inspired that, someone who came from very humble beginnings can do great things. And so that energizes someone with a growth mindset. So I'm reminded of when I was growing up. I was in Colorado when I was learning to drive when I was 15, 16 years old. So, lots of hills. We were right there outside of Denver. And so right there in the foothills. So very, very mountainous areas. My dad felt that it was important for his kids to learn how to drive a stick shift. So here I am in Colorado trying to figure out how to drive a stick shift, right? Not only learn how to drive a car, but learn the stick shift and the clutch and all that kind of stuff. So it was frustrating. I did not enjoy it. But one day, I was telling my mom how aggravating it was and that I didn't ever think I was going to be able to learn how to drive a stick shift. And she turned to me in her very, very rich Southern accent and she said, "Now, honey, if guys named Bubba can do it, so can you." And at the time, that cracked me up, right? If guys named Bubba can do it, so can I. But that also very quickly became quite a mantra for me, that if someone else can do this, then so can I, right? If guys named Bubba can learn how to drive stick shift, so can I. If somebody can learn how to start a ministry, so can I. If somebody can figure out how to raise these kids, so can I. One of the biggest difficulties in running a ministry is fundraising. That is absolutely a challenge. It is an emotional challenge. It is a obviously financial challenge, but it is very draining to constantly be having to raise money for everything that we do. The Lord just very graciously reminded me that I've been struggling with a fixed mindset in the area of fundraising and financing the ministry, the nonprofit that I run. You guys know, because I'm not shy about sharing it, that I run a maternity home here in Tennessee called Foundation House Ministries. You can check us out, foundationhouseministries.org. And while you're there, leave a donation. It is really difficult. We are a maternity home, so we serve moms in crisis, moms coming out of addiction, coming out of homelessness. We have a client who just got out of rehab yesterday and is coming into the house. We have a client who is currently in rehab and her baby is currently in the NICU still because her baby was born addicted to meth and is on a drip of some kind. I'm not entirely sure what kind of medication that the baby's on to help it heal off of its meth addiction. So that's hard to deal with every day. It's hard for our clients. We provide housing, transportation, education. We're trauma informed, and so we're providing a wide range of support services to help each of these women get to a place of long-term, lasting, sustainable stability. But that takes time, and time takes money, and it takes staff, and that takes money. And so it's really difficult to raise enough money to keep going. I personally believe that the nonprofit structure is woefully inadequate. The whole asking for donations for everything that we do, I think, is incredibly, incredibly shaky, right? It's very unstable because people want to give to a thing. They want to give to a house. They want to give to One More Mom. They want to give to rescue a baby from homelessness or from starvation. All very valid, very worthy efforts. What people don't want to do is help me pay my light bill, pay the staff, the garbage service at the house, right? Those are boring things that they're not interested in supporting. Nevertheless, they want to rescue a mom. They want to provide food and provide job training for these women coming out of addiction so that they can build stable futures for themselves and their kids. Very, very important, very necessary. And yet, how are we going to do that if we don't have staff? How are we going to do that if we don't have a house, if we don't have a thrift shop that gives them the job training? That costs rent, that costs utilities, like the whole thing. So we're very challenged in the nonprofit world to be able to actually raise the funds that we really need. Because ultimately, it's just like running a household, at least for us. For other ministries, that may not be the same thing, but we're running a household for 12 other people. So it certainly is costing quite a lot of money. And so that's a perennial challenge. And one of the things that I'm not shy about. That's one of the reasons why I write books and why I do traveling instruction, so that all of that is me funding this ministry, me expanding our financial reach, expanding our revenue, so that this ministry that I am so passionate about, that I dearly love as if it were, one of my own children that I birthed, this is me trying to fund it and trying to grow it. So in the midst of recording this podcast about fixed mindsets versus growth mindsets, the Lord very sweetly reminded me that here is an area where I have a fixed mindset and I need to be challenged into a growth mindset, that I am perfectly capable of it. Because once again, if guys named Bubba can do it, so can I. If there's someone else who's fundraising for another ministry, which I know a lot of people are, I know a lot of people who do it, then there is absolutely no reason why I cannot also be successful. And that is ultimately the difference between a fixed mindset and a growth mindset. And it also demonstrates that we can have a fixed mindset in one area of our lives and a growth mindset in a different area of our lives. So we humans are such unique, interesting, varied, multifaceted creatures, right? We can be very fixed and finite and limited. And one of my mom's favorite jokes about my brother when we were growing up was, she said his favorite thing was, "My mind's made up, don't confuse me with the facts." Which, he never did say that out loud, but that was her interpretation of his perspective. And so one of the things that reminds me of is that we can absolutely change our mind. We do not have to have a mind that's been made up in a negative way. Our focus can and should be on, okay, Lord, how do I do this differently? How do I do this better? So as we're thinking between the difference of a fixed mindset and a growth mindset, looking for those differences in ourselves is going to be really important so that we can better serve our clients. And then when we're working with the people around us, then thinking through, does this sound like they're demonstrating a fixed mindset or they're demonstrating a growth mindset? So that you can explain to them the difference, so that you can talk with them through the difference. And so then lastly, how do we change a fixed mindset to a growth mindset? Well, first things first, you cannot change someone else's mindset, period. You can open opportunities for them to learn, but you cannot actively change their mind. It just doesn't work. We can barely change our own thinking. The Lord can do all sorts of things. He can intervene, just like he did with me just a moment ago, and move a fixed mindset to a growth mindset. But what we can do is give opportunities to challenge that fixed thinking. So one quick, easy example is a GED. So a lot of our clients come in without a GED high school diploma. I say GED because that's easy, but it's actually the HiSET test. That's the new thing. But anyways, that's not the point. My point is, here they are, 22, 25, 32, and they don't have a GED. They don't have that high school diploma. We know that that is a huge limiter to what they can earn, right? They have to have at least that basic diploma in order to begin going high enough up to begin earning the salary that's actually going to become a living wage for themselves and for their child. So that's an imperative thing. But at the same time, they also come to us, with a history of drugs, with a history of jail culture. They may have valid reasons why they dropped out of school in the 10th grade or in the 12th grade. And we can see societally that a large percentage of current students are not reading at grade level. So even if they get to the 12th grade, does not by any stretch of the imagination say that they are capable of that level of knowledge and experience, that reading level, that writing level. So what do? We can either believe them when they say, "Oh, I can't do that. I'm never going to be able to do that. I'm too stupid for that. Or I'm going to fail that just like I failed everything else. Or we can say, let's just try one of these free tests on the internet, just a sample. It's not real. It doesn't actually mean anything, but let's just try it and see where you might score. And so all you have to do is Google. They're available everywhere. So all you have to do is take the test and see how you might score if this had been a real application. So then sometimes you can say, oh, well, yeah, she needs a lot of help to get to that level. Okay, fair enough. So now we know where we stand. But sometimes it's like you only missed like 3 questions. You absolutely could have gotten this done had this been a real test. Really and truly just maybe a few classes or a little bit of a refresher, and you would be able to pass this test. That's a true story. That's literally happened to some of our clients. Or you might even say you would have passed. You did not get anything wrong on that test. You want to go schedule an appointment to get your GED, to get your HiSET? That's an example of challenging their fixed expectations of themselves towards a growth mindset. So all we can do is offer opportunities for them to be challenged and then to prove that they actually have the capacity to learn and grow and change. So, even just recognizing things that we see growth in them. I am so proud of you. You have been showing up on time. You have been doing this. I'm not having to remind you to fill the baby's diaper bag every night. You have grown so much. You have been making such great progress. And in those ways, we can be encouraging the client towards a place of healthy growth mindset because it's demonstrated. Right? You can't. So this is the difference between self-esteem and self-confidence. Self-esteem is generally external. In my mental picture, it's just smoke, blowing smoke. Self-esteem is something external and fragile. Self-confidence, on the other hand, is rooted in experiential knowledge. I have confidence in myself because I have seen myself do this. The more of this that you can demonstrate, the more self-confidence a person is going to have into new things, right? Well, I was successful in that, so chances are I'm going to be successful in this. But when all they remember is, well, I failed at this and I failed at that, and I'm just a strung out druggie, and I've relapsed 14 times and I can't even get through rehab, and I didn't graduate high school, and on and on and on. All they see is failure. Then what makes us think that they are going to look to a new thing, a new program, a new class, a new opportunity, and see themselves as being capable of being successful? Because all they see in their past is failure. Now, I'm not saying that's accurate. I'm saying that's what they see. That's what they perceive. They have a fixed mindset, and all they choose to see is lack. So in order for us to help them move into a growth mindset, into a more healthy perspective, we have to give them opportunities to begin building that self-confidence, which will then translate into a growth mindset that says, maybe I could do this. Maybe it's not too bad after all. When we're working with other people, it's so hard to affect the true and lasting change that we so deeply desire for them. But we have to remember that it's not our responsibility, and it's also not our choice. It's not our timing, it's the Lord's. So we show up, we present opportunities for them to learn and to grow and to change and to heal, and then they make of those things what they choose. And to whatever degree they permit us, we can stand there being their cheerleader, being their encourager, reminding them of the areas where they have succeeded, recognizing the places where they struggle. I mean, we're not just sunshine and roses, but recognizing also where they have been successful, where things have changed for them already. And so if that changed, then why can't you choose to hope that this will change too? Choose to try, choose to make the effort. Because remember, if guys named Bubba can do it, thank you for stopping in for another episode of Rescue, Rebuild, Restore podcast, where I learned as much, if not more, than y'all. Thank you for joining me on the Rescue, Rebuild, Restore podcast. I pray this episode has equipped you to serve with greater clarity and compassion. If you're ready to go deeper, grab a copy of Rescue, Rebuild, Restore, Compassion That Works on either Amazon or at rescuerebuildrestore.com. And while you're there, you can also join our Rescue, Rebuild, Restore Compassion Collective.